Do you think this will work out?
I think it's going to be the best thing. Remember I said, if you got one left-handed point guard and one right-handed point guard, and they both can penetrate and pitch, and they both can score. This is going to be the best thing in the world because either of them doesn't have to feel I have the onus on me. And they feel real good with his 5 seconds going down, somebody's going to get the rock, and somebody is capable of having the ball in his hand. It's not like that time when LeBron didn't know who to pass the ball to. I think it's going to be great for him because, one, D'Antoni believes in run and shoot. Let's get it out and let's put it in the basket and then come back. So I think it's going to be really good for Chris Paul, and it's going to ease up a lot of the focus that's going to be on James.
I have serious reservations, serious concerns, serious sense that there are cracks in the foundation of what looks like a fantasy basketball roster on paper. Here they are. I'm going to lay them out for you. Number one, well, first of course you do the trade. If you're Houston, you do the trade. There's a maxim in the NBA. What you do is you just go for the most talent, and you have to do that.
Right.
If you have a chance to add Chris Paul, you add Chris Paul. But before we all put are they going to challenge the Warriors debates on the table? And certainly before we put banners in the ceiling that are not there yet, there are real concerns here. And I think number one is who has the ball. Now, I said this yesterday as we were sitting here, Cassidy, and you wrote it on a little piece of paper to me and passed it, said Chris Paul traded. My first thing is, how does that work on the court? Because James Harden was unlocked last year by being a different player. He was the primary ball handler and primary distributor. He went from 7 assists a game to 11 assists a game. And subsequently, the Houston Rockets went from 41 wins to 55 wins. It was unlock James, unlock the Rockets. Now we're going to rewind and put James back into the same seat he was before, where he's cutting, he's ISOing, he's slashing to the basket, he's spotting up. James can do all those things. I'm not worried about that. I just am afraid that the sum is less than the parts. Chris and James separately add up to more than Chris and James together. Let me give you this stat really quick. I think this is interesting. They were both, by the way, top 8 in possession and touches. They both have the ball in their hands. They held the ball now granted this is when they were apart, but 16 minutes per game last year. Now that compares to LeBron and Kyrie, 12 minutes per game. So someone is going to compromise. It's most likely going to be James. And I'm worried that means a compromised version of James Harden, who was in the MVP race. That's my number one worry.
So let me tell you why his assists went up. He had guys who could put the ball in the basket. You can pass it to anybody you want. If they don't put the ball in the basket, you're not going to get the assist. So he was able to draw and pitch. And he was able to pitch it to people like who? Eric Gordon, Lou Williams, who they're going to be sad that they missed or they had to trade. Those guys were putting the ball in the basket. That's all you need to do. And when you got this, hey, you got it, let's go. And it's that free-falling basketball that they used to play, that he wants to play. Way back in the day, Denver used to play it, right? It was called freelance. And whoever got the ball, guys 3 feet off you, put it up. They used to do it in San Antonio. George Gervin used to score 60 points a game doing it. It doesn't make a difference. These point guards want, and this is another thing. Chris Paul has something to prove. He wants to get to the Western Conference Finals. James has been there and beyond. He has to prove himself. He wants to prove himself. He wants to prove his worth. He wants to say, I was held back. When he goes to Houston, and James tells him, hey, they let you go. I don't even hear from coach unless I'm on the sideline. That's all you want to hear. You don't want, maybe he didn't want a coach in his ear telling him what to do. He wants to be the coach on the floor. And I just think it's going to be a great thing for Houston in this.
All right, now you've led me to my second and third biggest concerns here. Offense is only one, by the way, John.
Right.
Who's going to be the ball handler? Who's going to be the distributor? And does that add up to more than what they are apart is only one of my concerns. My other two concerns are this. You talk about what everybody has to prove. Well, you know what James has to prove? That he can and will play defense. Now, he's shown it from time to time, but the vast history of James Harden is not stellar defense. It's been more Olay. Now, you are playing defense with Chris Paul at your side. You two are guarding the backcourt of other teams. Now, let's just for a minute back up. What were we just talking about with the Clippers? Chris Paul, salty personality, high expectations, hard on your teammates.
I don't believe he had a salty personality.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's that debatable. The question is why. He's salty because he's asking the most of everyone around him, because he wants to win so badly, that he's such an alpha, that he is so driven, that he's hard on other people around him. Now put that personality next to a guy whose defensive effort has been, what's the right adjective? Inconsistent, suspect.
But this is the deal.
Lack of interest.
You don't show up on da-na-na with a great defensive play. You don't show. No one shows the great defensive plays. They show
their offense was their defense.
Right. John, that illustrates my point. You may not show up on na with that, but you know where you will show up at championship parades with defense like that. And if Chris if he's done with highlights and he's ready for championships, he has to have somebody next to him who's going to play defense. I promise you, Chris Paul believes that. And when James shows up in February and March, and if he's not playing defense the way Chris wants, now you're back to square one with Chris with the Clippers.
Then you're saying that that's going to be a bad thing. Maybe James Harden just needs someone to get him in line.
Well,
this is the deal.
Hold on. That's the optimistic view. That's your great.
I'm glass half full.
Bravo,
Clearly, you're glass half empty.
Bravo, if that's what happens, that Chris inspires James to new levels of defense. But what I'm telling you, because I'm telling you I have concerns, is what if he doesn't? What if James is what he has always been on defense? What if we don't just start anew? What if it's what we've always seen? And then you've got a Chris Paul who's got a teammate not living up to his own expectations, and we saw what happened in Los Angeles with that. We saw the poison that became in the locker room. We saw the poison that became among the personalities. I'm telling you, if you think that's going to go over like rose petals in Houston, you are being, with all due respect, overly optimistic.
This is the other situation. When you got two guards and one guard is not as good as defensive as the other one, then he plays the off guard. That's just what happens. He's not going to be the one put in front of him and say, I need you to get down.
James has had that with Pat Beverly. He's had that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, these problems existed for James when he had another backcourt mate that could play defense.
They are a year better, though.